Is it normal to not confide in your family and rather have more trust and confidence in your peers and friends? And why does this happen generally?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It's part of the growth process, going from childhood to adulthood, right? Right in the middle there, we have what's called adolescence. So when we're very young, we're very attached to our parents. I remember my first day of kindergarten. I was ready, right? I was a pretty independent kid. I couldn't wait, and I was excited to start school. But I remember there were a few of my classmates who were crying, holding on to their parents' legs, because they had serious separation anxiety.
Yeah.
So what happens is we go from being very dependent on our parents to not being quite independent enough to live on our own and pay our own bills and all of that. However, our peer group becomes more important because we're comparing ourselves to them. We can relate to them better than we do our parents. And I think it's just a natural part of the growth process where that does become more important because we begin to see our parents as somewhat flawed, actually. When we're very young, we think our parents know it all, right? I know as a little girl, I thought my dad was Superman, right? He could move mountains, he could beat up everybody else's dad. Exactly. When you become a teenager, though, and you're capable of more abstract thought, you begin to notice, well, my parents don't know everything. They don't have all the answers. They're not cool. Your friends are cool, right? They like the same things that you do. They have the same interests that you do. And they're not as critical of certain things, your musical choices and what have you, as your parents may be. So that's why it is normal to cling more to the peer group than it is your parents during that adolescent period. But generally, you eventually come around once you become an adult and you realize a lot of the things that your parents were trying to teach you, it really was for your own good. But I think it's a normal part of the process, but you learn from both sets of people who are inputting into you. You do learn from your parents, and you also learn from your peer group.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So parents often assume that they know what's best for their child. And so how would you suggest the child makes themselves be heard better?
Well, I think a respectful way for children to do this is to probably bring it up maybe at the family dinner table to say, hey, mom, dad, I have some questions. Or, hey, mom, dad, can I talk to you? I don't think most parents would turn their child down when they ask in that way. When they say, I have a question, can I ask you something? There's something that's on my mind or that's important to me, and then go from there. So to say, for example, if they're not being heard about perhaps a mental health issue, if they feel, I think I may be depressed, start off with saying, mom or dad, can I ask you something? Or I need some advice. Right? Parents, of course, want, since they know what's best or feel that they know what's best for their child, you approach it that way because that appeals to the parent's sensibility of, I know what's best for you. So, hey, I need some advice. I feel like I may be struggling with depression, for example, or I've just not been feeling myself lately. And I want to make sure you know about that because I don't know what to do. I'm not sure what direction to take, and I need your help. What parent is going to say, oh no, to their child, I'm not going to help you? You know what I mean? So that's the way to do it.
But when it is a situation having stigma surrounding it, like mental health itself, the parents are usually kind of hesitant, apprehensive to go with it. So how does that affect the communication usually?
Well, in that case, when the parents basically shut down, I would advise the young person to then go to a secondary or a proxy, whether that is a trusted aunt, uncle, a teacher, even a doctor. I know in my case, I tell young people they can speak to me, and I encourage that when young people come in, typically with their mother.
Yeah.
Once kids are teenagers, I say to the parent, if there's anything that your child wants to discuss with me alone, I'm going to ask you to step out of the room, because at this age, they need to start learning and practicing how to navigate a doctor's appointment with me on their own. And so that way, the child is learning how to trust me and speak to me maybe about subjects they don't necessarily want to discuss in front of the parent. And then the parent is learning, oh, okay, I need to respect my child's space. So yeah, if the parent is not really open, then we need to go to other adults, whether that's a physician, a teacher, professor, or even an extended family member who may be more willing to listen.
Right. Okay. So I've come to my last question to you.
Okay.
How do we know that we have reached a comfortable stage with our parents to talk about topics like relationship, sex, mental health, and emotions?
The easy answer to this is when it just is easy, like Sunday morning. When you're able to discuss these topics the same way you're able to discuss the weather, to discuss what your plans are for the week, you know you have reached that comfortable level. However, I do think it's work and that it's a process, because most people don't talk about taboo subjects rather easily. It's something you have to learn to do, and you have to be intentional about it. The reality is, sex is a part of life. We all exist because our parents had sex, right? Yeah. But there are rules around it. I say all the time, sex, for example, it's not for children. It's for consenting adults only. And so, again, having those conversations at an age appropriate way and not treating it as though it's a taboo. And the way my mom did that day, she avoided answering my question about the period. And then when I pressed forward and said, no, Mom, I mean about maxi pads, and she said, oh, you're too young to know about that stuff. We can't do that anymore. Yeah. When your children are asking the questions, you need to address it then. And when you're able to do that, or at the very least, have some books or some information available to point your children in that direction so that they can get the information, then we know we've reached that point that it's comfortable to address these topics within the family.
Right. And how would we, suppose I'm applying it to my own situation? My parents and I have never had a conversation like this, ever. And I'm 20 years old. I learned it all on my own, school. Yeah. So how do I test the waters?
Well, which parent do you feel most comfortable with? Your mother or your father?
I'm comfortable. Okay, mother. Yeah.
Okay. So when you all are having some mother-daughter time together, comfortable, not when she's upset, when she's calm, maybe just watching a TV program or she's relaxing a bit, ask her, Mom, what were conversations like with your grandmother, about, mom, woman stuff? Did grandma tell you about how to handle relationships with men? And just start it there.
Right.
And see.
That's smart. Yeah. Thank you.
And see what she says. You're welcome. You're welcome.
I'll try that.
Yes. I've actually brought this up to my mom. I've asked my mom, what kind of advice did my grandmother give you? And to get my mom to open up about this stuff. And what I recognized, it actually has gone down from generation to generation in my family. So my sister and I are the ones to break it. My great-grandmother did not talk to my grandmother. My grandmother did not talk to my mother. And my mom said, well, we just didn't talk about those things in my day. And she didn't really talk to me. She talked to me a little, but it was after my dad had done it, you know?
Oh,
Yes.
I'm sorry for your loss, but yeah. Yeah. So that was my last question to you, Dr. Kela.
Okay.
Do you have any advice to give to our audience or any questions for me? I'd be happy to take it.
Well, my advice to your audience is to take mental health seriously and not to treat it as though it is something that's taboo or something that's bad. We have to do what my sister and I have decided to do in our family and to break this generational curse of not communicating with subsequent young ladies in the family. And that includes young men as well, of course, when it comes to topics that apply to all of us. And then one question for you, Sneha, what got you involved with Mindfully Yours? You mentioned that you were a design student. Was there something specific in your life or your family? What made you connect with Mindfully Yours?
So I've always been fascinated about the way that people think, people perceive, people act. I always like studying psychological aspect of human behavior and all of that. I've always been curious about it. So when Anagha is actually my high school batchmate, we were in the same grade, we were in the same school together. And when she did come up with this project, Yours Mindfully, I joined in initially as an editor and then got super involved with the organization, and I haven't looked back. It's a great experience.
Wonderful. Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
I'm really glad to be able to collaborate with you all because mental health is a topic that's it's worldwide. It's a global issue. It's not something that's just specific to one culture or one nation. So I like being able to collaborate with people all over the world to try and do my little bit to make the world a better place than when I was born.
Yeah. And we always appreciate that. And we always need helping hands, of course.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for your time, Dr. Kela, and for the informative session. It was really, really wonderful talking to you.
It was great talking to you as well, Sneha. Good luck with everything and enjoy the rest of your weekend.
Thank you so much.
All right. Bye now. Bye, everyone. This concludes this week's edition of Let's Talk Teens, special edition with Mindfully Yours. Bye now.